Okay, I want to give you a sense of the different root causes that may be at play based on your individual life experiences. The Bredesen protocol organizes root causes for Alzheimer's by categories or subtypes, and there are a total of 6 subtypes. Most patients have a combination of several subtypes. This is common because the body is unlikely to develop a serious chronic illness without a combination of different things going wrong all at the same time. The key is to identify which of the categories feature most significantly for you. Inflammation has been demonized and decried as a bad thing by functional medicine. But what really causes inflammation? Inflammation is simply the body's way of signaling to immune cells that a pathogen needs to be killed, or that there's a lot of damage in a certain part of the body. Think about it like the SOS smoke signal that you can set off when you need help. So, inflammation itself isn't necessarily a bad thing if it lasts a short time and the problem gets fixed. In general, inflammation tends to involve an infection of some sort. When people think of infection, they're thinking about the flu or COVID or something with very obvious symptoms. But that's not necessarily always the case. You can have chronic low grade infections, and people who catch a cold or get a herpes outbreak every month or so. That's a chronic low grade infection that doesn't entirely take a person down. So the real culprit causing the brain damage is chronic inflammation. When people have persistent low grade infections, their body is constantly inflamed and trying to fight something. It's an indication that the body's immune system is not able to effectively deal with the pathogen. The processes associated with trying to kill a pathogen is like having little bombs go off all over the place in your neighborhood. Over time, things get destroyed and there's no time or resources to do repair work because your body is caught up fighting a war all the time. As a result, your brain function goes down the drain. This is also where your ApoE gene can be a risk factor. And we'll discuss more in detail the main culprits that cause chronic inflammation in Alzheimer's in later modules. Glycotoxicity refers to high blood glucose. So, this is for our diabetes and prediabetes population. We've all heard about how high blood glucose is bad for health, but do you know why? Think about when you're barbecuing food. Even with a small fire over time, the meat browns. That's basically the sugars in the meat caramelizing. Well, that's delicious in your barbecue. The same thing happens inside your body. When you have chronic inflammation and high blood glucose, over time, a layer of glucose is coated over your cells. And that causes a lot of problems for your cells, including poorer ability to absorb nutrients that are needed. This type of Alzheimer's is called type 1.5 because we know that high blood glucose can cause chronic inflammation as well. It makes it harder for the body to fight off infections and leads to a chronically upregulated immune system. In the later modules, we'll go into more detail on how prolonged high blood glucose causes Alzheimer's, the true root causes of high blood glucose, and how we can control blood sugar and treat these root causes. Trophic loss refers to loss of the nutrients, hormones, and cofactors that are essential to brain function. This is a contributing factor in almost all cases of Alzheimer's. Have you ever noticed that people who are very stressed tend not to age well? That's because our hormone and growth factor production decline with stress and age, and these are responsible for health, including our brain health. And with hormones, we're talking about the whole gamut. We have the critical hormones that are responsible for stress and metabolism, like cortisol and thyroid hormone. Your sex hormones like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone all play really important roles in brain and heart health and your overall well being. And we also have precursor hormones like pregnenolone and DHEA that are also really important in and of themselves. And here's a quick insight of the additional topics we'll be talking about down the line. We'll be discussing how to replete your nutrients using supplementation, And for those who have poor gut absorption problems, how to get those nutrients into you. We'll also discuss how to find out whether your cortisol and thyroid hormones may be causing low energy and brain fog. We'll also talk about bioidentical hormone replacement therapy and how this can be very helpful, not just for postmenopausal females, but also for men as well. And lastly, we'll discuss cutting edge concepts like how to stimulate brain derived neurotrophic factor or BDNF and nerve growth factor NGF, which are both really important for brain function. When we talk about toxicity, we're referring to environmental toxins such as mold and mycotoxins, heavy metals, pesticides and agricultural chemicals, lifestyle chemicals such as BPA and phthalates, industrial chemicals, and dental toxins. As a species, we humans have never had so much toxicity in our environment. Toxins created by man or induced by human activities have now flooded every aspect of our world. The most common toxins that I find in my patients are those that are sitting right inside their mouth. Indeed, dental toxins are some of the biggest root causes of chronic health conditions, from Alzheimer's to diabetes, heart disease, and autoimmune diseases. Additionally, from moldy homes to lead in our water, herbicides in our food, and microplastics in our ocean, we've never had so much toxicity on the surface of our planet. And now we're suffering the consequences of this pollution in our health and the health of our children. So we'll be discussing how to test for what toxins you have and how to treat those toxins. Vasculature refers to blood vessels. Patients who fall into this subtype have any one of these cardiovascular issues: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, a history of heart attack or stroke, any other cardiovascular problems like peripheral artery or peripheral venous disease or aneurysms or erectile dysfunction. Yes, erectile dysfunction is often a vascular problem and often the canary in the coal mine for heart disease further down the road. And of course, all of these can go hand in hand with high blood glucose, which is your type 1.5. So it's quite common to see patients test high for both types 1.5 and 4. And as you know by now, the brain uses a lot of energy, so it requires blood vessels to bring oxygen and nutrients to make this energy. And when there are problems with your blood vessels, your brain won't get the oxygen and nutrients it needs. So what happens when you have to starve long term? You become tired and unable to function properly, right? Well, that's the same as what happens to your brain. So we'll be discussing in detail how poor blood vessel integrity hurts brain function and how we can treat that. Trauma here refers to physical trauma. Getting a concussion is obviously one of the worst ways to hurt your brain. And the most obvious example here are your football athletes. But you don't have to have a concussion to hurt your brain. Even something mild like a whiplash injury when you get rear-ended or falling down without direct impact to the head can cause some damage to the brain. Basically, your brain sits suspended in cerebrospinal fluid in the heart bone casing that is your skull. So whenever your head moves excessively, even if nothing hits it, your brain is sloshing and banging against the heart casing of your skull. And brain cells are microscopic and delicate, so they get damaged very easily. So I'm hearing you say, wait, Dr. Snowy, this was a while back. Surely there's nothing that can be done by now. Of course, it would have been much better if you received treatment soon after the incident. But there are tools that we can use to heal your brain from that past physical impact and help you improve brain function. And we'll be covering this in later modules. Okay, now that you've learned all about the different Alzheimer's subtypes, it's time for you to check out which types feature more strongly for you. Go ahead and click through that questionnaire entitled, "Which type of Alzheimer's do I have?" You'll receive a brief summary of the types that you want to focus on.
This was an excerpt from our Masterclass Ending Alzheimer's with the Bredesen Protocol. If you liked this video and found it helpful, you'll want to check out this masterclass at our Sophus online website. Click below to find out more.